Welcome to KVA. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you're doing great this week. Today we have Quentin Contreras joining us, and we're going to be talking about navigating AutoCAD Plant 3D Spec Editor to create custom parts. Thanks for joining once again. We're happy you're here. I wanted to share our upcoming KVA sessions. These are for the first 2 weeks of September. Next week, we're having Tiffany Hayden on. She's going to be doing part 2 of her Planning for Automation series. Tiffany Hayden is an Autodesk Expert Elite, so this is going to be a great session. She's very knowledgeable. And then the week after, we're having part 3 of our 2D to 3D transition series. During the first 2D to 3D transition series, we got some feedback that people wanted to see it actually be done. So that's what we'll be covering. We listened, and we're going to show you the step-by-step process. And stay tuned for this coming Tuesday. That's when you'll get your monthly newsletter. And we'll show you the rest of the topics that are upcoming for September. So you can save those and know what's coming. That's coming to you this Tuesday because of the holiday on Monday. And lastly, because this is an AutoCAD session, I wanted to share this free resource that we have for all of you. I'm going to drop it in the chat. It's 33 essential AutoCAD tips. So it just kind of goes along with our AutoCAD theme today. We're so lucky to have Quentin on. So thanks everybody for joining. After the session, please be sure to fill out the survey. It'll pop up on your browser. Let us know how you liked the session or if you have any questions or any topics that you'd like to see covered. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll let Quentin take it away.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thanks again for everybody attending today. Hopefully I can get you some insights on Plant 3D and Spec Editor and Catalog Editor on how that works and what you can do with some of that stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. So basically the agenda for today is learning the process of creating like parametric parts, and I'll explain what those are in a little bit if those of you are unaware. The process to create parts using existing solids, so we're talking like 3D parts that you would get somewhere or create your own, and then adding those parts to a catalog and a spec. And then also I wanted to give some insight on other resources to where you could obtain catalogs and specs that are already created to where you wouldn't have to go through the process of creating those particular items. So those are some of the things we're going to cover. So a little bit about me. So I here with KETIV, I'm a senior application engineer. Basically, I do support. I'm doing training and just in general facilitating for customer specialized workflows, helping with some of the issues that you might run into, or if we can help facilitate something that you're running into that you need help with, specialized help with, we can help with that too. My background, I've worked in the industry, the oil and gas industry, going on 20 plus years. So I guess that kind of shows my age. But anyways, prior to coming to KETIV, I was with Autodesk as well. I was with them a little over 11 years, but mainly supporting AutoCAD, the tool sets, but more in line with Plant 3D, obviously, because of my oil and gas experience as well. And just a caveat as well, I also was a teacher for at one point in my life. I taught 5 years of CAD to mainly juniors and seniors, those kiddos that were looking to be either architects or engineers, and kind of giving some insight on that, which was helpful because, at that age, you have these broad dreams of what you're going to be, and sometimes it's not what you think it's going to be. So it was good. It was good to be able to teach that and give them some insight before committing, to going to college and doing something like that. But anyways, that's a little bit about me. So let's go ahead and get started. So there's a couple of aspects that we need to look up here when you're thinking about custom parts, because basically with Plant 3D, and I'm going to be bouncing back between the two different applications here that come with the install of Plant. So basically, you'll get your install of Plant 3D, and when you install this, you're going to get another install of the spec editor here. The spec editor is where you go into your catalogs and you pull items from a catalog and put them into a spec. So basically, just think about this as a as a toolbox, and you're looking for these particular parts, these tools that you're going to be using with a project. So you only need a certain amount of items. You don't need everything that's in your toolbox. So you're pulling all of those out and putting them in your spec. So kind of think about it that way. It kind of helps, visualize this a little bit more. Once you get that all figured, then you're going to create a project over here in Plant, and that's where you're going to pull your spec from. So your spec is going to contain um, all these different components that you put in from the catalog in here. And basically, when you do that, you'll get, these available to use. Let me show you this right here. These will come in here, and then you can pull from these and add them to build your models with and Plant 3D. But so out of the box, Plant 3D does come with pre-existing specs and catalogs. So some of this is already built in. What you're seeing right here is what's going to be provided initially when you first open Plant 3D. You have these specs available here. But unfortunately, all the time, this is not going to facilitate the needs that you might have for any customized parts or anything that's kind of out of the scope of what you normally would use, out in the industry. So that being said, that's where it comes into play that you're going to need to create custom parts. So there's a couple of ways you can do this, and that's kind of what I wanted to go through today. So basically, and I'm going to be going through this pretty quickly just to give you an overview, but this this information will be available for you that way, especially this PowerPoint, because it does go through step by step on some of the things I'm going to talk about today as well. So let's jump over here to Spec Editor. I'm going to bounce back over here and kind of want to show you the first thing that you would look at with creating your custom parts. So there's two different parts that can be created. There's parametric parts, and then there's 3D solids. There's solid parts that you can create from. Parametric parts. So basically what parametric parts are already predefined solid objects that are built into the spec editor. So if you look up here, I have a couple of tabs up here. I have a spec editor tab, a branch table editor, and a catalog editor. And if I go over here into my catalog editor, right now it's showing blank because I don't have anything open. So let me go ahead and open, I'm going to open a spec. So let me go ahead and open a spec. And this is one that I've created earlier. This is just, so what's happening is when I open the spec, it's going to pull all the parts that are in my spec. It's also going to open down here the catalogs that the parts came from that are located in the spec. So with that being said, now I can do a couple of more things in here that are enabled here that weren't enabled before because I didn't have that open. So basically, with parametric parts, you're going to create a new component here. So over here on the catalog, I have to have the catalog editor tab active right now, and I can jump over here to my create new component. So when I do that, it's going to give me all of these different items that I can choose from. So right now we can look up here at the top. So we got components, we got piping components. If I select here on component category, I can see the different types of components that could be used with facilitating the need that I have for a specific part. So I'm going to jump over here to valves because it's kind of common that those are going to be needed. So if I look through here, it gives me a list here, but if you notice, there's a slide bar here. So with this slide bar, there's different variances of different types of valve bodies that I can use. And there's also different end connections that I can use. So that's going to be important on what you're modeling, what those end connections are, whether like welded or threaded or socket or soap, and different scenarios there and what you might have. So you'll be looking through these, finding something that's going to fit within the parameters of what you're going to need to build your spec with. So as I'm scrolling through these, let me just find something generic here that I can show you a little bit more. All right, so I'm going to take this one here just for instance. So I got this inline valve right here, and it's just plain in. So I could go ahead and that's the one I want to use. And this is, like I said, this is just for example. So I need to go through here first and fill in some of these details. So some of this stuff is going to have to kind of be thought out before you go into this. So you're going to have to think about, like I said, your end types, what you want to assign these as. And when you do that, that kind of goes through and narrows your selection down as well. So as I'm going through this, you can see that some of those got narrowed down. So let me just select this one. It kind of reset me here when I did that. But anyway, so if I select this one, and then I can select size ranges as well. So depending on what sizes you're going to need for that particular spec, then you can set that size range. So for this one, I'm just going to say 2" by, let's say, 8". And those will give me the different sizes there. And then I could enter in, the description on what I would want my short description to be. And like I said, some of this is going to have to be thought out if you've never done this before. Just kind of think how this is going to play out as you're going to continue to build things. You're going to have to kind of want a structure on naming everything. That way you're consistent across the board. That way when your designers are looking at these parts, that there's some familiarity there that makes sense on what they're looking up and what they're trying to find. But I'm just typing this as an example. This really doesn't play into kind of that. But anyways, so I'm just going to call this, for example. So I got all my parameters filled in here that it's required to do. And you can even do you can do imperial metric as well. So just think about that. So if I get those selected, then I can go ahead and create. And if you notice, it jumped over here and pulled in this item here, which is the one I selected. And then there's some different items, different tabs here as well for this particular component that I created. And if you notice down here, this is where it was added to. So it did add it to this ASME valves catalog. If you wanted it in a different catalog, you could have selected a different catalog for it to be placed in by making sure that that was open down here first. All right, so I'm not going to go into detail about this because there's a lot more information here, but I did want to show you this part of it. So in order to complete creating this part, you would need to go in and fill in these required dimensional information, description information, and then there's some other optional stuff is here. If you notice this one here in the red, if you see anything in red, that's going to be a required field that you do have to fill out. So it does need that information. And the reason for that is because it does take that dimensional information in order to create this component per the parameters of the size, that I'm going to be using here, that you're going to want to be set for like a 2" valve. If I jump over here to a 3, it's going to want to know that as well. So this is the size tab. And then there's also a general properties tab. And there's some more information here that you'll need to fill out as well. So that's kind of the process that you would have to go through. And then also to go on that, you would have to, go through the process for each one of these sizes and filling in these required fields. For the general properties, this is going across the board for all these sizes. It's not, individual. So only in the general properties do you have to fill this in once, but when you go to the sizes, you'd have to do it for all items. Also, when I put in my size range, it gave me all the sizes between 2 and 8. If I didn't want one of these sizes, I can select these, and then I can remove them from the list here. So if I didn't need these 1/2" ones, I could take out these, and so forth. So there were sizes in here that didn't really pertain to this component. Then I can remove those and then just leave the ones that I need to update with the information. So that's parametric parts. And then once I get this created, then I should be able to add this component from the catalog to a spec and do it there. Okay. So I'm going to just close back out of this, and that's the parametric part of it. So this is the most easiest part because, like I said, these are all predefined. There's scripting logic between the spec editor and Plant 3D that's involved in creating these components already. So all you have to do is fill in the size parameters, add the information, and then you're good to go with the part within the model and everything. So that's kind of the way to go if you can go that way, because that's the easier way. The other way that I'm going to show you is to create a custom part from a 3D solid. So let me go ahead and close out of this like I said I was going to do. And I'm going to jump back over here to Spec Editor. And so everything's closed over here. And I'm going to go ahead and jump back over to Plant 3D. And I need to open a drawing. So I am going to open, I believe I already added it here. So what I did is I created this project and I created this this drawing file in here called Custom Symbols Template. So I'm going to open this one. So within this drawing, I have predefined 3D shapes. So these are different valves, ball valves that I've added that need to be added to the catalog. And these are actually these were acquired from a vendor. So a vendor supplied all of these components. So I didn't have to draw any of these. They did have 3D solids of these. So this is something that you could do is if you're looking at using a particular vendor for your project, you could go on their website and see if you can find if they allow you to download the components already. That way you're one step ahead and you don't have to create them on your own. So these were, already created on their website to download, and all I have to do is download these and then put them in here. The way I lay these out too is that, let me jump up over here, kind of follow through what we're going through here, is that once I get these in here, I kind of like to keep a reference drawing first of these items. So I'll go through, I'll put some reference points on, construction lines or where these insertion points are at, where the actual outside, the furthest out part location of this valve. That way I can do my port connections on this, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And then I like to label these as well. That way I can keep track of the sizes as I'm going through these. And then also I like to keep originals of this if I ever have to revert back before going through the process. So like I said, these are 3D solids that I acquired. So let's look at a couple of things here. I want to pull up my properties window, pull this over here. So if I go through here, I can see that, there are some items here that I need to add and so forth. And I can look at the properties here. I think, let me double check. These might have been exploded down all the way. But what you're really wanting is not like surfaces here, like this one's a surface. What you're really wanting is a 3D solid of this. And that's what you're going to use to do the plant part convert. So as you're going through this process, I like to create this drawing first, like I said, and then I'm going to go through each individual part and create a component that can be used in the plant. Let me show you that process here. So basically, I need to use these 3D shapes to convert into a block. So if I take this, for instance, and do a conversion of this, then I get that. So I'm going to open actually another drawing. See if I can go here. And should be this one here. Give it a sec for this to open. All right. So over in this drawing here, this is the same drawing, just looks a little bit different. There actually are, like I said, I like to kind of go through steps in dividing these out sometimes. So these ones are my blocks over here, and then I have these 3D shapes over here. So if I look at one of these and the components here, I have my surfaces here and everything. And then if I look over here, I've converted those into a block reference. So basically, I just went through my block command and selected each one of these and made it a block. Once I get into a block, then I can take the block and do a command within Plant to convert that to a part that I can add to a catalog. So let me show you that. So I'm actually going to take this one and I'm going to actually copy. I'm going to copy this one. So I'm just going to select it. I'm going to do a Control C to copy clip. I'm going to jump back to this drawing because this is part of my project and I need it to reside over here. And then I can just Control V that one there and put that in here. So as you can see, when I go over this one, it's a block reference. It's not a a solid surface reference here. So now that this is a block, I can use this command over here, plant part convert, and that's going to go through the process that it needs to be able to see this in the catalog. So over here, if I go plant part convert, I can select this, and it's going to go through a couple of steps to where I can add information to this in order for it to have connection points within the valve that it's going to connect to, like a pipe or something else within the model. So I need to add a port, and I want it to be on one side over here and one side over here. So I'm just going to select the center here and then pull it away. And you can see that it does add that port connection by giving me this glyph definition here. And it asks me if I want to accept it or flip the direction. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And then it's going to ask me if I want to add, delete, or move, or just get out of it at this point. I need to add another one because I need one on the other side. So I'm going to switch over here. That way I can see it. And I need it on the other side over here. So once again, I'm going to try to get to the center here if I can, and then pull it off that way. All right, so I have my 2 ports. I'm going to go ahead and accept that and then exit out of there. So at this point, it does become a component that I can use within Plant 3D to turn into a parametric part. Not a parametric part, but a 3D shape part that I can add to the catalog. So let me jump back over here. Time-wise, there's a lot process going on here. And like I said, all this information will be provided to you, but I kind of want to go through the basic steps on what it takes to get this there. So looking back over the slide thing, we went through this process, went through the plant part convert, selected it, added the ports, as you can see here, went through both sides and added the ports to that particular item, and then went through and did all that. So we did that. And here's what happens though. So after running the plant part convert, it's going to create some additional files. So I have this drawing file, which is going to be the core base of everything that I'm doing here and creating all these components. But once I go through the initial process like I did here of doing it the first time, it's going to create this DWG, excuse me, HTML file, and then it's also going to create these PNG files. So these files are necessary in order for what we were seeing in Spec Editor when it was giving us the preview image of it, and all the other information of the parametrics of this, the sizing and everything that it's pulling in as well. That's going to be able to do that within the Spec Editor. So that being said, you'll notice these as you're building and creating these parts within the project here. And actually, I can probably show you. Where did I put that? So it should be here. So this is my project that I'm working in right now. This is the folder structure, if those are familiar with using Plant. And over here in my Plant 3D models, here are those files that I was just talking about. So it created this XML and then this PNG file here as well. So like I said, if I were to go in here and then create those other sizes, it's going to build on this list over here of those other sizes. All right, so that's kind of what we're seeing here as well. And I'm not going to go through the process of doing all of this. There's just not enough time, unfortunately, to go through all that. So it goes through that process. Once it completes through that process, then you would jump back over here into your Spec Editor. So here within your Spec Editor, you're going to want to build this, to add that valve size to a catalog. Because remember, we're pulling parts from the catalog to put into the spec. So I would jump over here to my catalog editor, and basically the way I do this, if you wanted to create all these custom parts, I would probably create it to not an existing catalog, but to a brand new catalog. And in Spec Editor, it really doesn't give you the ability to create a new blank catalog. It only really gives you the option to create a catalog from an existing catalog. So basically what you have to do is you have to go through the process of that way. So you would go through and pick the catalog that you would want to use. And it kind of really doesn't matter because basically we're just creating a blank one. And then when it creates the new one, it's going to have all those parts in it, but then we're just going to delete them all. So since I'm doing valves, I would create a copy from the pipes and fittings catalog that's already there. And then I'm going to give it a name that I want to call it for my catalog, whatever your naming convention might be for that. So once I do that, um, it would create that new catalog, but then I'd need to go in there and actually delete all the items. So basically what happens is that, let me just go ahead and open an existing catalog and I can show you. So like this is the ASME, oops, catalog here. So when I open this catalog, it's going through the process and all of these components are here. And then I'd have to delete all of these. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can select the first ones, and there's quite a few parts in here. So there will be a lag if you try to select them all and delete them out, or you could just kind of go through and just do a group of them first, and then delete the components that way. So that's one way that you could do it. It's kind of up to you. The last time I did this, I went ahead and just selected the first one, scrolled down to the last one, selected them all. It did take a couple, maybe 3-4 minutes to delete them all, but it's just because there's a process that goes into that. So that's something to think about. So anyways, so with the blank catalog, then what you would do, let me get out of this, close all again. I think I still have my blank catalog. I should. Yeah, so this is my blank catalog. I've deleted all the parts. It's an empty catalog right now. So basically you would go through the process now, kind of like what we did, what I was showing you with the parametric parts. So you're going to create a new component, but this time you're going to select this one down here. Before we had this one selected with the parametric graphics, we're doing a custom one now that's based off of block. So like I said, block-based custom components. So we're going to select that. And basically, it's the same process that I showed you with the parametric. So you're looking at everything here and setting all this up first. So obviously, I would want valves and then give it a description, give it the end type, size range that I'm going to be using, and then number of ports, and then I'd create that. I'm not going to go through it here, but I'll show you through here. So this is kind of what I just talked about. You would fill in all that information in this window up here. Once you're done with that and you create it, then you're going to have to go in and make sure that you've got all your other items in there. And that's what I was showing you with the parametric part as well with those end types. So you kind of have to think this through, like I said, also with the other one on what everything needs to be. I kind of like to do a spreadsheet to have all that information there. That way I can just bounce back and forth and fill it in pretty quickly. Or those of you that are, piping designers that have been doing it forever, it's probably in your head anyways on what needs to go in here. So you can do it that way too. But yeah, you would go through that whole process. I showed you that earlier with, the catalog editor and the different items here that you would have to fill out. So you'd fill in all that information. There's also isometric stuff that you have to think about as well. So like your S keys. So the S keys are the actual block components that get put in to an isometric drawing. So like here, there's some here. There is a document within Autodesk called Demystifying AutoCAD Isometrics. And the paper does have some charts in there, and the charts do give the images examples of those symbols and also the S keys. I won't get into detail about that. That's a little bit more advanced, but this is part of what you'd be doing. But it kind of gives a general overview of like elbows. If you're creating custom elbows, then you could just go in and use one of these S keys that's there, or look at one that's already in a catalog, see what that S key is assigned of, and just use that and see if that's going to work for you too. All right, so that would be another part of it. Then like I said, you'd have to go to your sizes. We talked about this going in there. I did my size range here. You can go and delete them. It's the same process basically. And then the only other difference is that it doesn't give you a parametric image because you're going to be building off of the one you just created that block of and did the plat part convert to. So at this point, this is what's a little bit different. You're going to select from the model. And when you go and select from the model, you're actually going to that DWG file that I was just showing you. Within that DWG that I'm in the project right now, that's where it's going to find the blocks to be able to use. And the other important thing, like I was saying too, is I don't think I mentioned this part, but as you're going through and creating those blocks, just make sure to give them names like what it is, what type of valve it is, a kind of description short, but also what the size is too. Because when you go over to this drawing, if you created several of these components, you're going to need to know which correct one to pick because you don't get sizes with it. So the description is going to help with you on that. So when I went through this one, I kind of gave it, 1.5 inch, 2 inch, 2.5, and so forth going through here. So kind of think that out as you're going through it. So you go through that process. And then same thing like on the parametric, then you start filling in all that other information there as well. Once you're done with go through that, like I said, I like to have kind of like a pre-thought out descriptions, long description, short description, all the other pertaining information that would be associated with those sizes. That way I can just bounce back and forth when I'm filling in that information. So maybe having an Excel sheet kind of set up like this with all that information preset would help as well. It also helps if you have to do this in the future and build another component that's going to be similar to already have this already developed. That way you'd have all those sizes just ready to go and it just saves you time. All right, so that being said, once you get all this, all your images in there, the sizes, all your information in there, then you would go ahead and save it to the catalog that you created, that blank catalog. Once you do that, then you go and you want to add that component to a spec. So within the spec, you're going to have to create a spec from existing, or you could just create a brand new blank spec as well. So that's, it just depends what your use is going to be. If you already have a spec and you just need to add that component, you could do it, just do it that way as well. So this is creating a spec from an existing one, kind of like we did with the catalog. So like, for example, the CS150, and then I would just name it whatever I want to name it and do it there. And once you get all that put in there, then you would just create it. And then once you get that spec created, so basically it would kind of be something similar that I'm seeing here right now. So let me bounce back over here and open a spec. I should still have this one here, this custom one I created. And jump over here to the spec editor tab. So I created this one off the CS150 and it's going to pull all those other ones there. So let's say I just wanted a copy of that, but I did want all those other components in here because I just wanted a brand new spec that I'm going to add my valve, my custom valve to. So that being said, then I haven't created those parts in this catalog, but then if I had, I would just open this catalog, I would find my part and then add it there. So kind of like what I'm showing here. So basically going through that process, opening that catalog, the component would be in here. So let's say, let me jump back over here let me actually go over here to valves. So I could go into one of my valves, and if I had my custom one, let's say this one's it, I could pick it, and then I'm going to add that to the spec, and it would add it to the spec over here. The other thing that you would need to probably do once you add a new component, it's probably going to give you these warning indicators here. So basically, this is your part use priority. So basically, what that means is that when you're inserting that particular component into a model drawing, it's going to default to which one has priority first. So if I go into here, I can look at each one of these items here for the sizes. So like for this bolt set here, there's two components in here. There's two different bolt sets. So I can set priority on which one I want to be first and which one I want it to be second. So with adding the valve, if you're adding this to an existing spec, you might have a ton of valves in here. And it might not be that important. I mean, you might just want to leave it as is and then change it out. It should, when it inserts to a particular size, it's going to insert to the right size anyways, but that's fine. But if you did want to change this part use priority, you can do that too at that point too. So like for these, if I pick one of these sizes, I can see all the valves here and I can change the priority on that. But for valves, I probably really don't have to too much. All right, so that being said, that kind of goes through what I talked about here with the priority. So you would select one, you have these little arrows here that you can move. So you just can't, it doesn't allow you to drag and drop it. You have to select it, then use these arrows to move it up or down in priority. The other thing that's part of this is once you get everything configured the way you want to, you will want to mark these as resolved. Let me go back over here. So if I select one and if I select mark as resolved, then it's going to accept that you made the changes. This is how you want it. And then it would change this little warning, the yellow warning exclamation symbol over to the green symbol to show that that it's been addressed. So if you did that, that's what would happen. And that kind of I wanted to explain what the differences are in these the part use priority symbols that you see here. So at that point, all you should be able to do at that point is just to save the spec, save the catalog, and then add that spec to a project that you're working in, or update the spec that you're working in. That way it pulls in that new component for you to use. And at that point, you definitely want to test it first before actually having your designers move into using it in production mode. So, you would want to go in and place it in model drawings to make sure everything was connecting as needed, as you were expecting it to, and then run your isometrics off of those examples to make sure you were getting, everything showing up correctly within the isometric drawing itself, and then also within the bill of materials too. And then you can also make sure to try it out with your ortho process, go through, create some cut orthos to make sure those are, showing up correctly in your ortho drawings. So that's kind of the fast version of how you would create those custom components from 3D Solid. So we went through parametrics, which is kind of the easier one if you can go that route. But if you have some customized components that you're just wanting to look like the vendors, then you can go through that process. You'd have to go through this process here. Takes a little bit more time, but just think about it this way. Once you get it created and you're good to go, then you don't have to worry about it. So those are the two options on creating. I was mentioning the other option of finding you can find pre-existing already built catalogs and specs. And that can be found through different resources. There might be some third-party resources that do have that, but one place you can go, let me click on this link, is to the Autodesk App Store. And let me just kind of start it. I kind of got it directed right now with that link to go straight to Plant, but let's go just directly to the App Store. So if I go to the App Store, so it's apps.autodesk.com, you would go over here to Plant 3D, and then you want to look at catalogs and specs. So within here, there are some content that other third-party resources have created, and then there's some that Autodesk has created. Now, some of these are free, some of them are paid apps, but it's kind of, do you want to take the time to build them, or is it going to be more cost effective to buy one? That's up to you. It just depends. But there's also free apps, and you can filter through these. So if I just wanted to look at the free apps, I can look at the free apps. The ones I wanted to point out, though, are these ones that you would see in the free that have these kind of blue boxes with the arrow with the black border around it. These are provided by Autodesk. Now, these do not come installed with Plant, because if they were to install all of these, it would just take way too much space on the install process and probably take longer. So, but you can come here and you can download these. So there are some additional things here that you might want to look at first before thinking about custom components, because it might already be here in this location to where you could find it instead of having to create your own, like Vitalik fittings here. There's some other stuff that I've seen other customers use as well in here too that aren't in the normal install of Plant 3D when you initially install it. So this would be another option. When you go in here, you would get your download. You can download from there. I'm pretty sure you have to sign in though with your Autodesk account in order to download it, I think, or create one. But it is free, so you don't have to worry about that. So that would be the other resource that you could do to that. And then you should be able to see it over here in your spec editor, add it to specs, and then go from there. But anyways, so that's kind of the brief overview of doing all that process. I did want it. I'm gonna. This will include the link to the App Store and also to that other document that I was talking about. This is that document, the demystifying, that has the ISO key symbols, but there's also some other information in there about isometrics that you might find useful as well. But anyways, so just to recap, so we went through the process on how to create a parametric part. We also went through the process of creating creating parts from existing solids, like from a vendor or something you might have created. Maybe you created these parts in Inventor, maybe an inventor brought them over to Plant 3D or AutoCAD, created 3D solids, and then went through the plant convert process to do it that way. That's the other method. And then I showed you how to add those once created components to a catalog and then to the spec to be able to use it. And then I showed you those other resources on the pre-built catalogs and specs that you don't have to do any work with. They're just already there. So anyway, that kind of goes through what I wanted to talk about today. And I think we have a little time for Q&A. I haven't really looked to see if there's anything that's come through, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Quentin. I don't see any questions just yet, but please drop them in the chat. And once again, everybody, you'll receive that email on Tuesday about our upcoming sessions. We're hoping to have Quentin back on soon too.
I'm looking forward to it. I have some more content that I'd like to talk about at some point. So yeah.
Yeah. It's like we got some feedback about the split screen, which we can apply next time. So thanks, Daniel.
Yeah.
Good to
I
know.
like my wide monitor, but I know for some people it's probably not the ideal setting. So I'll take that in mind next time.
Yeah. And we'll have the recording up on our website tomorrow. So if you want to zoom in or get a closer look at anything, that recording will be on our website by tomorrow.
And will they have access to this slide deck?
Not the slide deck, just the recording. If you'd like me to include a link to it, I can.
Okay. Yeah. I think that would be helpful if we can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good to me. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We will see you guys next week. Have a nice 3-day weekend, everybody. And thank you so much, Quentin. I'll see you guys all next